This is a demonstration of exercise M820 computing overhead variances. Mason Fender is a competitor of Matthews Fender from exercise M819. Mason Fender also uses a standard cost system and provides the following information, and the problem gives us the static budget, variable overhead, fixed overhead, direct labor hours, and the budgeted number of units, as well as the standard direct labor hours, which is 0.025 hours per fender. Mason Fender allocates manufacturing overhead to production based on standard direct labor hours. Mason also reported the actual results for 2024, and we are given the actual number of fenders produced, 20,000, actual variable overhead of 5,350, actual fixed overhead of 26,000, and actual direct labor hours of 460. And in the requirements for the problem, it asks us to compute the overhead variance for the year. So variable overhead cost variance, variable overhead efficiency variance, fixed overhead cost variance, and fixed overhead volume variance. And then explain why the variances are favorable or unfavorable. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to compute the standard variable and fixed overhead allocation rate. So to do that, we take the budgeted fixed overhead of 2,300, and we would divide that, since it said that it was allocated based on direct labor hours, by the budgeted direct labor hours of 575. And that gives us $4 per direct labor hour for the standard variable overhead allocation rate. Next, we're going to compute the standard fixed overhead allocation rate by taking the budgeted fixed overhead of 23,000 that we were given, and again dividing that by the budgeted direct labor hours of 575, and that gives us a fixed overhead allocation rate of $40 per direct labor hour. So the first variance that we are going to calculate is going to be the cost variance. So to compute the cost variance, we're going to take the actual variable overhead that was reported in the problem of $5,350, and we're going to subtract from that the standard cost, which was $4 per direct labor hour, times the actual quantity of direct labor hours, which again the problem gave us to be 460. So we calculated the cost variance, or the difference between the actual variable overhead minus the standard cost times the actual direct labor hours, to be $3,510, and that would be unfavorable. So let's see why. So the $3,510 is the difference between the variable allocation overhead rate of $4 times the actual quantity, and comparing that to what we actually spent for overhead. So if we had actually calculated the overhead rate that was actually allocated, we would have taken the actual variable overhead and divided it by the actual quantity, and that would have been $11.63 per direct labor hour, which was certainly greater than the $4 standard cost that we used. Next, we're going to compute the variable overhead efficiency variance. So to do this, we have actual quantity, which was 460 direct labor hours, times the standard quantity. So to compute the standard quantity, we take the number of fenders that we produced, which the problem said was 20,000, and we multiply it by the standard direct labor hours per fender that was given in the problem of 0.025. So that would give us 500 standard direct labor hours for building 20,000 fenders. And then when we multiply that by the standard cost, which we calculated to be $4 per direct labor hour, that would give us a favorable efficiency variance of $160. And the reason why is because we would have allocated 500 direct labor hours to build 20,000 fenders, and it only actually took us $460 to do it. Now we're going to compute the fixed overhead cost variance. So the problem told us that the actual fixed overhead was $26,000. The budgeted fixed overhead that the problem gave us was $23,000. So that's a $3,000 unfavorable cost variance. And that is because the actual total fixed cost wasn't kept within the budget. It actually cost more. Now we're going to calculate the volume variance. So we had originally budgeted $23,000 budgeted fixed overhead, but we ended up only allocating $20,000 fixed overhead, which was $40 times the 500 direct labor hours for the 20,000 fenders that we actually produced. So that 3,000 was also an unfavorable volume variance. And so we only ended up producing 20,000 fenders instead of 23,000. So that is what caused the $3,000 volume variance. And so that is the completion of the exercise M820.